Welcome, everyone. My name is Maccabee Griffin, and this is Beyond the Pen with my lovely co-host, Marcella Gonzalez. Hello. Can you hear me now?
Hey, guys.
Oh, good.
I can hear you
Okay.
much better now.
Okay, good. Because we were having technical difficulties earlier today.
Always.
So, as always. So, if you're new to the web show, thank you again for being here. We appreciate it. And just so you know, we take the well-known adage, read between the lines, to a whole new level and beyond. Each week, we sit down with a new author to not only discuss one of their books, but also learn about the story behind the story. Now, I've been excited about today's guest for many reasons. One, because he is our first fiction author on the podcast, and two, because I wanted to know his dealer's name because I couldn't put this down until I finished. And I'm not the only one who said this, because when I was reviewing the reviews, one of them actually made the comment that he felt like he was reading a short story by Stephen King. And I'm not joking on this. Bad joke, I know, but I do, but I want anybody to know that this is one of the coolest books that I've actually read. I really like it. I haven't even finished it yet, just because I don't want everybody to know what's going on. I want you guys to be surprised too, just as I am, because I'm still getting to, I think I'm at chapter 5 right now, but I love this book. It's a really good supernatural thriller / urban fantasy, and it was very well written. And I don't know about you, but I really liked it. So what do you think, Marcella?
I have the book in my hand.
Well, yeah, of course you do.
No, it's fabulous. That's the best word to describe it. And it's intriguing and wow. Let's put it that way. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely one of those that once you start reading it, you're not going to be able to put it down until you finish it. And which is a good thing. That's what a lot of authors really want you to know, what to hear, especially the first published, the newly published authors. And this is one of those. I mean, this gentleman has only been out since, of what I can see, since October. So, and he's got over, I think, of what I've seen, I think it's like 20 to 25 different reviews already, and they're between 4 and 4.5 stars. So, to me personally, common sense would say that's probably a good book to read. So I think it's time that we bring him on, don't you think? I think I've talked enough.
I haven't left my review left. Yeah, I haven't left a review yet because I want to reread it.
Yeah, that's the same thing. So it'll be around 25, 27 by the time we get done with this, hopefully. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you the time dealer himself and the author of Unwanted Time, Mr. Isaac Betancourt.
Hi,
hello,
everyone.
Sir.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Let me switch things over so you don't have a line between the lines. There you go. Hi,
everyone.
So,
hey, Isaac.
Hi, Marcella. Great to meet you, Griffin.
Thank you. It, like we were already talking earlier, that it was very interesting how his background and how he got to this place, in terms of writing and becoming a newly published author. Marcella actually got me connected with him, and I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, this guy has a great history. I mean, he is you know what? I'm just going to stop talking and let you just introduce yourself to everyone.
Let me see how I how I start. Yeah, I'm Isaac. Hi everyone. I actually, when you see the book, it says that I'm a former FBI trained hostage negotiator, and that is the absolute truth. I used to spend time in Quantico, training new FBI agents as to be how to be a hostage negotiator. But that's not how I started. I started with taking Spanish literature in college. That's how I got the kind of the bug of writing. I used to write short stories in Spanish, which I won like first prizes and all that just as a hobby when I was younger. Then after that, I joined the military. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division after college, and then I went to the Gulf War with the 82nd Airborne. Then after that, I got into law enforcement, but I always had that, you know, how you have that desire to do something, you know, and it won't let you know, it won't leave you alone. You know, Isaac, you must write. Isaac, you must write. You know, this, you know, this little, you know, gremlin, you know, kept telling me, you know, and finally this pandemic made it happen. You know, because at that point I was like, you know what, you know, you know, this is the best time to actually do this. You know, I'm at home. You know, I got time. I'm actually have the story, the concept in my head. And actually, at the time when the pandemic started, I only had like about, I would say probably 4.5 chapters, you know, out of the 20. So out of the 20 and yeah, out of the 20. So that's how it evolved, you know, from you know, from a concept to you know to publish it, you know, on Amazon.
Now, how long did it actually take you to actually write the book?
Well, the concept, the idea started many years ago. You know, and it started almost like, I call it a skeleton story, where I just filled the blanks of how the story would go. Mind you that when I sat down and wrote it, a lot of chapters came that I was not planning. You know, that I was not planning to write. That's the way that it kind of evolved into what it is today. But I would say probably, I tell everybody, full time, it took me about 8 months. I would say full time, if you were gonna count hours, full time hours, we'll say 8 to 9 months it took me to write it.
That's pretty good, especially for a newly published author. I mean, that's insane. I do have to ask you a couple of things. One, like I said earlier, and I've already talked to you about this too. I asked you earlier, but I wanted to say it online here too, live. Who is your dealer? I mean, who is the dealer for you putting like there's got to be something within those pages, within those words, that just made me just like not want to put this thing down. I mean, I was just sitting there just going like this the whole time online, just like, oh, this is so good. This is so good. So I have to meet him because I really want that stuff.
You know, I'm flattered you say that, because my filter is, if I don't find that interesting, I don't expect anybody reading it to find it interesting. So I am constantly doing a self check when I write something. To describe nature or to describe the scene or what have you, something that I want you to think, to have a visual, because I'm a visual person and I like to portray images as I write. So I want people to see those images in their head as I'm seeing them, like a storyboard that moves, you know, keeps moving, and you can see it with me as I'm telling you the story. And that was my goal.
Oh, trust me, you definitely did good on that, because that's exactly what was happening in my head. And especially at the most disturbing parts too. I was like, oh my gosh, I am
We
very
actually
disturbed.
discussed that earlier. The fact that it said storyboard, Isaac, and we were actually discussing the movie version of this already.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we're like, okay, I'm guessing somebody's going to pick this up easily and just start writing it in script form for people just to do, and calling you up and saying, hey, we want to make a movie out of this. Because I could actually see some interesting people playing in this movie. Definitely.
Yeah.
I could definitely see, oh my gosh, who was it? The People online are going to kill me, especially those that are Star Wars freaks. The gentleman who played the new Darth Vader, I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but I just see him as Patrick for some unknown reason. I do. I haven't figured out who I think would be good for Helen, but I will get back to you on that. And speaking of which, because I'm glad you brought that segue in there, because as someone who loves to create background stories for characters, especially when I'm coming up with the voices, I'm always looking for inspiration from the people around me, as well as from films and TV stories and stuff like that. Where did you go to get your inspiration for this?
That's a really good question, and I think is as I told you already before we started, that the story is based mostly on the 80s, and I'm a child of the 80s, and I love the 80s and the music and everything that goes with it, the big hair,
Marcello's hair right
the
now.
leg
Yeah.
warmers,
Never
the
had
leg
big hair,
warmers.
guys.
Yeah.
I never had big hair.
No, but you have it now. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
I don't have big hair.
And I'm dating myself to the younger audience here, but people like us, we witnessed the evolution from almost no technology to what it is today. When we were growing up, you'll hear this from your grandparents and your parents. There was no cell phones, there was none of this. There was pay phones. You had to go somewhere. There was no internet, and so forth. So my story is based on a time that was we love to say this, a simpler time, when things were a little more less complex,
Yeah.
in a way. So the story goes there, and there was not a lot of resources that people had then, and it shows in the novel, with the characters being somewhat dysfunctional, you can say. Yeah.
Just a tad.
Yeah.
Just a tad.
And the stigma that goes around that, where you have issues, but you have to just toughen up and keep going.
Yeah.
There's no, you gotta go to a psychologist or have therapy and all that, because it was a stigma. Then in the culture, which for some people still is. But anyway, so that's why I based the novel in the 80s.
And someone answered the question for me. Hayden Christensen.
Oh, did you mean Darth Vader? Because the new Darth Vader, this is like decades old already, Max. So where are you in time?
Well, if I don't ask on that one, because
okay,
I'm still in between the 30s, the 50s, the 90s. Today, sometimes it just depends on what my mood is.
He was the Darth Vader of the prequels. But I do have a question, and I think this was a really good segue. Who was the inspiration for Helen? Or was there inspiration for Helen?
There was an inspiration for Helen. Yeah, there was. Unfortunately, it was a relative of mine. So yeah, and it wasn't that, but it wasn't that she was like Helen. I mean, no way close to it. It was just events that happened throughout my life as a teenage and a child growing up that happened, that kind of are almost similar to what happened to Helen and Helen's mother in a way. That will be for another podcast, of course. But it's almost there's some, and the interesting thing, Marcella, thank you for the question. Is I didn't realize that until I finished the book. I was like, oh my God, that reminds me of this event that happened in my life. And I'm just going to touch on the event very quickly. So what happened is I was in the military, and my grandmother, who I loved very dearly, who was the mother of my mother, she started suffering from dementia. And my aunt agreed to take care of my grandmother. So one day I go on leave, and I'm very young at this point. I would go on leave to Puerto Rico. I'm from Puerto Rico originally. And I go on leave, on military leave, and I say, oh, let me go see how grandma's doing. And I go to this, I drive to this house, which is about 20 minutes away. And I go there and I knock on the door, and it's like one of those movies when you knock on the door and the door is ajar, and then you're like, hello, and then the door makes that creaking sound.
Ooh.
And I see, and there's no furniture, everything is dark. Everything is dark. And I was like, what's going on here? And I'm like, hello, hello. And nobody's answering. I see a note on the table, on a table there that they left behind. And then I go to the room, and my grandmother sleeping in the room by herself. She had been abandoned.
Are you serious?
I am serious. And
Oh.
so anyway, so at that point, then of course the natural things happen where I started calling people. We sought medical care and so forth like that. But that was kind of like part of what the character of Helen came from, kind of like that. Of course, in an exaggerated motion.
Right.
But that was the basis of the character.
And of course, the craziness actually came from Marcella, of course. We've had this talk.
I'm only half Puerto Rican. I'm only half.
I'm not even going there. We're leaving that one alone. Okay, so if we're going to be talking about characters and everything, I have to ask, where did Carmen come from?
That was my next question.
That's so funny. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So, as a also Puerto Rican, okay, and Carmen, for everybody here, spoiler alert, she's Puerto Rican also, Puerto Rican, descent and so forth. It comes from basically any noisy neighbor that you have.
I'm sorry. The reason why I was asking is just because of the way that you put it as for her language. It's not Spanglish. It's Carmen Spanglish.
Yeah.
And I will give a spoiler on this one because there are few people in our lives that we actually see people that do this. But there's one part of it. She's talking about, and help me with this a little bit. Raccoodilla, which is in her mind is half raccoon and half ardilla.
A squirrel. Yeah, it was in Spanish, a squirrel.
That's for squirrel.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, when Helen goes out there with a shotgun, because she's like, okay, this is just weird, but okay, we'll go with it. She gets a rusty old shotgun, goes out there, and it's what is it?
It's a possum.
A possum, out of all things. And she's like, this is the new mutated version of something. And I love her. I love how she says, like, I could just hear like the Spanish character from Family Guy just saying, "Oh, mija, I don't know what this is. They're not on the island." So, and she just walks away. I'm like,
and that comes from a true story. So,
of course,
I can tell you the story. So,
please.
When I was doing law enforcement, I used to be on patrol, and I got a call from the dispatcher to respond to a house where there was a monster in the backyard.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm like, so I of course I asked the dispatcher, a monster? They're like, yes, officer, a monster. So I go there to the address, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And there was an Asian family that apparently just recently had migrated from China to the United States. And they were like, they had never seen a possum before. So they're telling me there's a monster in the backyard, there's a monster. And then when I go back there and I flash my flashlight, the possum is trying to get out of the yard, the townhome from the yard, like, I'm scared of these people. I don't know what's going on. And I tried to do my best to explain that it was just a natural animal. It was just a natural occurrence. They live in the area, because they had never seen one either. So anyway, so that's where that story kind of
Oh my gosh, I love it. See, this is the reason why I love this show, is because when people are doing these little symbolisms and they're telling these stories within the story, I'm like, I have to know if you actually really went through this position or this story, because it's insane how many people like, oh yeah, this came specifically from this. It actually happened. And so I decided to put it in the book. It's like, I love it. 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 All right. So here's the other thing I have to ask because of your background, and because of, setting the scene of the story a little bit, because I don't want people just to think it's a comedy or anything like that, because it's not, but it's got a twisted, there was a Michael Douglas movie back in the 80s, and I talked to Isaac about this earlier too, and it reminded me, I think it was called Heat, or something Heat. And it had that same type of feel between doctor and family member or patient, and having an affair and all this other stuff. But here's the thing that I really wanted to talk about, is because you're hitting some things that a lot of authors won't even touch anymore, because of the fact that they've come to light so much when it's dealing with PTSD and mental health and stuff like this. But the one thing I really wanted to ask you about this, and I think you hit it on a little bit here, but it was the way that Helen's, who, by the way, Helen is the main character, just so you all know, one of the main characters. And she's like struggling more with this morality of, being a caregiver and a daughter, but also dealing with someone who's actually caused her harm when she was younger. And I know that you stated that this was, closely based off of reality for you, but I just want to know, why is it that you felt like this was the way you wanted to set up the situation, set up the whole book?
The story starts like that, and then it evolves into something else. But the theme there, if you're gonna make a word association with Helen, and the struggle is, sometimes we struggle with freedom, what we call freedom, and our responsibilities. And that happens throughout our lives. When we have
Mhm.
children, I cannot do the things I used to do anymore. Or when I have a job, I just have to stay there. I cannot leave. All this stuff, and I need this job because I gotta pay the bills. So it's a constant struggle of human beings, as human beings, we struggle with what's right, what we think is right, and what is it that we would like to do in a fantasy kind of thing.
Right.
And how some people go to extremes to achieve that kind of goal.
Yeah, and I felt really, it made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I understood. But for me personally, it's just because of the fact that as an actor, I always try to figure out what the mindset is of the character at that time, and I found myself going in some very dark spots in my own brain, um, and just like many others have said, like I said earlier, it has that almost Stephen Kingish short story feel to it. And even my wife, who is a huge Stephen King fan, just like Marcella is, she was, after reading it too, she was like, yeah, it definitely has some of those feelings here and there, and some of those themes as well. And it almost, what's scary, she almost reminded me of Misery, almost, as the way that she was, her mom, and then not wanting to, just going into that psychological point of just like that break. And that, I thought that was really a good, to me personally, for the audience, that's my way of explaining a little bit of what her mindset is like. And she's very methodical, especially with her list. And I wanted to ask you, why was it so important that she had that list in your mindset when you were first creating this situation?
Uh, with that regard, really, really good question. With that regard, I was thinking about a criminal mind that wants to get away with something. And especially if they want to be free, what would it take for me to be free? And I think in her case was like, I need this so I can stay on point and not forget or make any mistakes, because my goal is to be free eventually. To accomplish that goal, I must do whatever I need to, even though the list was a dangerous thing to have. She regarded freedom more as a price, as a reward, as an end goal, than having the risk of carrying a list around of the things that she needed to do to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, and I thought was even more interesting was the fact that you took it from not only her mindset in the act, but also from the victim mindset as well. Right when she's being and spoiler alert on this one, and you'll get that feeling anyways when you start reading it. She actually starts to murder her mother, Elizabeth. You actually went from like the action point, like I could actually see the camera going from seeing the actions of Helen using a pillow over her mom's face and doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden it just flips real quick into like the internal monologue of the mom and what she was saying. So here's my question for you again on this. Why were you, just like Elena, why did you do that? Was there a specific reason why you did that?
Because I wanted to make the characters as human as possible, and the book is about emotions and human beings' emotions, and how do we feel through those hard times and so forth. So I would have done Elizabeth at this, an unjust act, if I would have not explained how she felt when she was being victimized. Because regardless of what you do in life, it's not up to us to decide, who lives and who dies. It's there are other powers, at B that actually decide those things.
Yeah.
But as people, and that's why the vigilante stuff is so controversial and so forth, because there are no set of rules. So at that point, I wanted to show the people what Elizabeth was going through at that point.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times where you really don't get that internal monologue. And I thought that was a great twist onto what was going on the situation, because you really don't get that from a lot of authors when creating fiction. I've noticed it in a few books here and there, a few authors here and there, but not many. A lot of them are just, okay, we're going to paint the picture and then we're going to move on. And we're just going from scene to scene.
Which brings me to a question, Isaac. So I know in my own writing style, I have to process specific emotion to be able to write specific scenes. What were you thinking at that moment? How were you feeling?
That specific scene was one of the pivotal points in the book. So I had to make it sound like almost like a mini climax in a way that was happening there. So I was thinking about the struggle, the anger, the emotional feeling, the betrayal that she was feeling at the time. I tried to identify it, or come to a point in my life where I felt those things, and then to go through the progression of how, because if you read psychology and you read about the stages of grief, for example, there are 5 of them, and then you go through that, but then when you are dying, you have no time for that. It's gonna be a rapid kind of thing. And I just wanted to show people that although Elizabeth was not the nicest person out there, us as a human beings, if we're going through that, we're gonna also have emotions, because it doesn't matter who you are. There has to be an outlook, to what's happening and what she decided at the point, which made the story continue of what decision that she made.
Yeah, because obviously we're talking about a mental breakdown of, I need my freedom. I'm tired of you just being selfish. I'm tired of you dealing with, making me not have a childhood. And there were a few, and here's where the supernatural stuff comes in at the beginning, at least, is that there is a little bit of a cult involved in it at the beginning because of the fact that her dad, oh shoot, I had his name and lost it.
Colton.
Colton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He had died on a motorcycle. And then obviously with the suspicious mind of Elizabeth, the whole idea that why was he on the bridge in the first place? He's not even close from where he works and all this other stuff. And I love how you made him so lovable, that person that everybody loved, especially the kids, because of him giving back to the community. And then you bring in another man who's like almost completely opposite, but has that facade of being this nice guy, very charismatic. He is, he'll do everything he can because he wants to, but it's not really because it's in his heart. It's because he likes the fame, because he's living off of what his grandparents did with the town. And I love how you created that mixture between, okay, this is the good guy that was in her life when she was young and it was taken away. And then all of a sudden now, boom, here's this narcissistic, fame-loving kind of guy that was like, okay, we're just going to joke around about this and having this a little affair and stuff, having our thing. And then he makes that joke about, well, if you want to be with me, then you're just going to have to get rid of your mom. So why was it so important for you to make that like big switch between a loving father and then her coming in and just seeing this facade of a doctor?
I think there are 5 things that people that I learned that people value, and this is in a book from Fisher and Shapiro, which is about negotiation, and they say that there are 5 core values that we like as human beings. And some of them are autonomy, affiliation, role, status, and affiliation. Those are the 5 things. So at that point, the reason I'm bringing that up is because for Helen, it was a matter of status in a way. Mm-hmm. Remember that she said, I want a house, I want this, I want that. So she was willing to ignore everything else about this guy just so she could get that fantasy life that she wanted, with her freedom. Now, the dad, I ride motorcycles. I love motorcycles. So that's where that kind of came from. I've been riding motorcycles over 20 years now. In a way, I fix them. I do everything, so I'm one of those guys. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast kind of thing. So anyway, so that's where that came from. The character, yeah.
You kind of get her idea of like, because I'm glad you brought that up about the 5 stages and stuff like that, and the 5 processes. Sorry, my brain's not wanting to say words right now.
Yeah.
But I loved it because you even put it subtly in when she's talking to the 911 dispatcher, when she's going through the alphabet on him, and she gets to R and she says rich. Now, to me, I'm like, oh no, this is straight up murder. If I was a dispatcher and I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that's straight up. And to me, because again, I'm basing my idea of what's going to happen off of this one little part, because she is so meticulous with everything, with the list, with the cassette player, with the pencil and everything. And this paper that she has, this list, she has written on it so many times because she's so superstitious. But it's when this started to happen that when she said rich, I was like, oh, she's done right there.
I have to say, you just made my day. The reason why that is because you are I wanted to make that exact point that you just brought up with the call from the dispatcher, but nobody has told me that before you today. And that's exactly the goal that I wanted to accomplish. And during that scene, specifically what you just described. And I just, right now, just feel complete because that little scene right there that I
mean, your speech was like for 3 seconds there. Your face just froze up real quick. Well, because as someone who is was in the military too, because I was with the 25th ID as well as the 46 engineers, and I was supply. So we have to go through this all the time. And when you're going through that alphabet, R is normally like Romeo or something or road or something like that, but not rich. And that was like, okay, yeah, she's done. They're going to bring that back easily on her. I hope I didn't bring out too much on it, but I thought it was a great point. I was like, I have to do that. I have to ask him about that. There were so many other things about this that I was just like so enthralled with. And I want to talk about Patrick a little bit more too, because
are you talking about the doctor? The doctor?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, so
Doctor.
I apologize. His name is Paul.
Paul, I'm sorry. Paul, not Patrick. See, I knew I would mess up on at least a couple of names here and there. I'm known for at least messing something up with this. I knew it was going too easy. But
you know what I was thinking? I was thinking I should have named him Patrick. Actually, I like that name.
Well, in your rewrite, maybe you could do that. But I love. Here's the other. Before I start talking about Paul, I mean, I love how you've already made 2 different versions of the book. You made an English version, and then you have a Spanish version. Now, I guess there's not a lot of authors will do that unless they're starting to work on their audiobooks and stuff like that. And they're like, okay, we'll get the bilinguals in there, we'll make it up, and they'll make work. And obviously, when you're talking about doing that, you already got someone who can speak Spanish. Obviously, that's a downright. Well, most of her Spanish is there. She's giving me the death eyes, but it's okay. I have to pick on her. She's my big sister. Okay, give me a break here. Anyway, because she picks on me all the time, every time. See, exactly. But back to Paul. The concept of that narcissism within him is, I love that concept of like, you're trying to make him, you're hitting the subject of a lot of characters are out there, like they'll have that facade on for everybody else as being this grandiose, wonderful person. And then all of a sudden you just look behind the door and they are the most ridiculous person. They're horrible. And in this case, obviously, with him and his wife, at first he did everything because of family, went to Malibu, still did the general medical stuff. But he wasn't happy, and he met this woman, an artist. He loved his work and everything, did everything he wanted to do to get her. And then when he gets back, he's like, okay, it's all about the family. I don't care what you think. It's all about the family. Why did you want to put that in there specifically with his mindset?
Because it comes back later.
Well, yeah, I figured that's going to come back later. But can you give a little bit of hint of why it was like so important for the family segment to be a part of his behavior?
Yeah, because when you and you mentioned earlier about his father saving the town, his family saving the town and so forth. So he goes to Malibu and he feels vulnerable. He feels exposed. He feels like he's just a regular Joe in a way. And yeah, he's a doctor, but he's no, when he goes back to town in North Carolina, this, by the way, this happens in North Carolina. He is, like you said, he's a famous person. He's revered. He's the talk of the town. people like, and he needs to feel that narcissistic ego with that fuel that he doesn't get in Malibu. So it wasn't that much about the family. It was more about him as an individual, and what filled them as an individual. Yeah, his family was there because they gave him the status that he wanted. But it was mostly about him the whole time.
Yeah, and I love how his wife actually, his wife calls him out on it too. He's like, "You're not doing this because you love it. You're doing this because of your ego." And he did not like that answer at all. So I hope this gives a little bit of an insight to our audience to just the first couple of chapters, because I'm going to continue to read this because I have it on Kindle Unlimited already. So I'm going to finish reading this easily today because, again, I need to know the drug dealer's name because that's what these pages are like. And it's something that I really, truly believe everybody that is listening to us on later and people are watching now, thank you for being here. We love you and we appreciate it. But here's the thing that I really want you guys to do. I want you all to really go out and get this book. It is called Unwanted Time. It looks exactly like that. Time Unwanted. I always do that again every time. There you go. I had it right there too. I'm dyslexic. I swear. Between ADD and dyslexia.
I got my copy when Isaac released it, and I bought it right away. And then I said, all right, I'm going to say it again. This is an empty page. It's waiting for your signature, Isaac.
She's going to send it back to you just to get your.
He's going to come to New York at some point, and I'm going to find out where he is, and he's going to be like, here. Not even hello, Isaac. How are you? It's so nice to meet you in person. Here's the book.
Yeah.
No, I had a comment on the book itself. It's not an insult. It's going to sound like it's an insult. It's an easy read. However, it's so intense, which is why I like that it's an easy read, because I could go back and read it over and over. And I feel like, I feel like I'm reading it and it's like, okay, this was simple enough to read and to understand. I love your writing style, but I had to go back and like process everything. I had to process it. It's not like I was reading Kafka or somebody else where sometimes I'm sitting there going, what is he talking about? I knew what you were saying, but I still had to go back and process everything. That's what I loved about this book.
Yeah, and here's the other thing with that too, is the fact that a lot of people with your writing style is the fact that they like it so much they're like, okay, now I want to go back and I want to see if I pick up on any of these little hints like the rich, like I did. Because again, when I'm writing my questions up and everything, I always have to go back and forth through the pages once, 3-4 times just to get the thought of like, okay, how can I word this out? And for me, I was like, okay, I'm already going to start from the beginning again because I've already started, because as a voice actor, I'm always going straight into it like it's a play or like it's a script, and I'm just like reading exactly like it is. And sometimes I do that a lot. I really do, unfortunately. But here's the other thing I really wanted you to do. Marcella, can you put the book up to the camera real quick?
Yep.
Because I want to ask you a question real quick on this. Why that illustration? Why the hand? What was it so important to have the hand there?
If I told you, I would give the book away.
Oh, so I gotta wait. I gotta read the rest of the book to figure it out. Oh, you are.
I asked him when I first got it, and he said the same exact thing.
All right, well,
but it would totally make sense after chapter 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally makes sense.
Got it. Yeah. Good, because I know I got something to look forward to. Okay.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to mention was that regarding my writing style was that in an arrogant kind of way, and I apologize to the audience for saying this, but people ask me, Isaac, this book is well written, and the comments like so forth. Where did you take writing classes, and so forth? And the only thing I can tell you is that I only took Spanish literature, when I was in college. But for this book, I wanted to be like a painter. and paint my painting the way that I wanted to paint it, with the colors, with the strokes, with everything, without following lines, without saying, well, for this technique I must apply this shadow kind of thing. I must do this first and I must do that first. No, I just wanted to splash the colors and then write, and then develop something that you might see something, and then Marcela might see something else, and so forth like that. And that was my style. And and I took a risk because I said, you know what, I am not following any pattern, because some writers will say, well, you cannot go from third person to first person, which sometimes I do. And and you'll see that, but to me it just fit the story in a way that it made sense, and it made sense to me. So my writing style might be something that some people may criticize, that this is not something that follows a pattern, but it was just my painting in the way that I wanted to paint it.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people are like that. And there there are very few people that actually write it like that. They want to actually do it, you know, technical skills here and there just like that. And then all of a sudden you come up with people that are like you that say, okay, I want to paint it. I want to paint the picture so well that people can see this like a movie, or go into an art studio and go, I understand exactly why they brushed it out this way and this way. I understand why he used that specific type of brush on that part of the painting. Um, because again, that's like everybody. And this is another reason why I love doing this podcast, is because I want to always bring authors on like you that have done this, that are going through it again. They're already starting to work on, I'm pretty sure you're already working on another one on this one.
I am. I already got 4 chapters on the sequel.
See,
Oh,
there you
Lord,
go.
those were my next questions. That's how I was going to close.
I know. Sorry to take
God,
over for everybody.
punch you in the face, Maccabee.
I know, I'm taking all over great stuff. But for me personally, I like that style, because it makes it, one, it makes it easier for me to read it. Two, it makes me, because of the fact I feel like I do have ADD. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I do. But for that, it does help me to, like, okay, I want to be enthralled in this, and it makes it so much more entertaining. So when I'm bringing authors like you on the show, I want other people to know that they don't have to stick with a certain technique. They don't have to do it a certain way. They can just be themselves and create whatever flies out of their mind onto the paper or onto the computer. So I'm going to end on that part for myself. Marcella, it is your corner.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you, and we usually try to get through them real quick, Isaac, but you're good like that. So, the first thing, what's your writing kryptonite?
Procrastination.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can identify with that. Next question is there a quote? Do you have a favorite quote that has inspired you to write, or does inspire you to keep doing what you're doing in general?
That's a really good question. I cannot recall the quote verbatim right now, but I like this quote that I read once, that this writer uh, uh, wrote, and it went something like, "People see the world to guide themselves. Writers see the world to describe it, in the writings," or something like that.
I like that.
I
Yeah,
like
and it was
that. You're
something,
gonna
it
have
was
to
not
find it
verbatim,
and
but it
send
was
it to us.
something like
Yeah.
that. And that is so true, because as I described earlier during the podcast or in the interview, those experiences in my life have helped me shape this book, and it's going to help me shape, other books, and so forth. So, yeah.
So
I
my
like
my
that.
last question. I have one last question. What's next?
Ooh.
So, I hope that your wishes come through about, this book turning into a movie. I I'm gonna say that as a first author, first writer, I'm very flattered at the response that I have received so far, the positive, feedback that I have received from strangers, because from people that love you, it's hard for them to actually be critics because they don't
Mhm.
want to hurt your feelings, but strangers, they're not invested. So, they are actually, I've heard a lot of great feedback, which, it's flattering. But I think right now I'm working on the sequel because people have asked me for it. And I'm
Nice.
writing another book, and the title is going to be The Macaque Cult.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And it's going to be about, and it's going to take place if you guys want to research it, there's an island off Puerto Rico that actually the monkeys only live there.
Mhm.
Oh yes,
I
I
know
know
it.
this one. I know
Yeah.
this one. Yes.
So the book is going to be based on that kind of island and things that
Ooh.
happen and so forth like that. So
Wow.
You
yeah,
heard it
yeah,
here, folks, before it
yeah,
even began.
yeah,
Yeah.
So we're going to keep you to that. We're going to put your feet to the fire on that one.
yeah.
Um, I want to thank you so much for being on the show, Isaac. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Please tell everybody where they can find your book, any live events or any special places that you want to close the show with.
Yeah, thank you. So my book is on Amazon, like you mentioned earlier. It's on the Kindle version. For those of you that are subscribers to Kindle Unlimited, it's free. Otherwise, it's 199, which I put it a price to for people to actually enjoy it, and cheap. And also, I often come on Clubhouse. That's how I met Marcella, and people ask me about my book. There's also I created a club just for people to join if they like the book and so forth. It's called Time Unwanted Club in Clubhouse, and um, it'll be great to get your feedback and so forth. You can find me online anywhere, Instagram, LinkedIn, with this name, of course. But I do in advance want to thank the audience for their support, as they read the book, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as many have already.
Oh, I can tell you right now, they are definitely going to enjoy it. I am absolutely sure. Um, what is it? Oh, okay. Somebody was putting the remarks. I'll put it up for you guys to see. So you're either Polak or Rorschach.
Rorschach.
Rorschach. Yeah.
Pollock.
Polak. What did I say? Polak? I told you
Oh
I
my
cannot
God.
read tonight.
Nah.
I cannot read today. I also don't have my glasses on too. So I'm gonna say that. It's the reason because I don't have my glasses on. I'm,
Oh my God.
I'm at work. I don't care.
And actually, let's see. I think I know who sent that.
Yeah, because I can't see it on my end. But you know what? I think it's hilarious because it's true. It's true. Because that again, that's what people push this out as. It's like, hey, we want
Yeah.
our authors to be like painters. Like you said,
Yep.
we see it a certain way. You guys put it a different way for us. You make it more wonderful than what we see. Because people like me, we're not good with words. So as you can tell. But Isaac, thank you again for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please head over to Amazon, grab the book, Time Unwanted, and just enjoy this great thriller slash urban supernatural urban something. I don't even know anymore what the category is, but there's so many things that you can just push this under when it comes to category wise. But I love it just because I love the whodunits. I love figuring things out. I love a little bit of like the supernatural stuff too, but mostly like the whodunits. So I'm already in. I'm already going to buy my copy and get him. I've already got the unlimited one, but I want the physical copy too. I'm going to send it to him, and I'm going to have him send it back to me with his autograph on it, because I can tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, the way this is going, he is going to be as big as Stephen King.
I wish.
Hey, you keep it up with the writing style, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So stick around real quick, Isaac, after we get off here, and me and Marcella will give our final thoughts on everything, and then we'll close out. And I thank you again so much for being on here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Marcella, what do you think? I know I'm moving stuff around.
I know. So as you know, I know Isaac from Clubhouse, and I'm always excited when someone I know does something creative. So it's book, music, and once I met you, and I realized that we interview a lot of self-help authors, you know, but I felt that Isaac needed to be here. I felt like he needed to be on the show because it is an incredible, intriguing, scary book. It's scary.
It is. It is.
And that's coming from somebody like the Queen of Horror in my, my own little circle. So I hope everybody gets a copy of the book. I got mine right away. I need to reread it. I've been recommending it. I mean, I'm glad you started. You like it. You started and you like it.
Oh yeah. So, yeah. Straight from the first like couple of pages, I was like, oh yeah, I am in so easily on this. This is going to be one of those that I am going to be rereading, just so I can go back and just figure out if there's little things like that first one I gave out to everybody. If you didn't hear it, that's on you. You'll figure it out when you read it, because you got to read it to figure it out.
That's right.
But for me, I'm definitely one that is going to be getting it. And it is wonderful to have him on here. And I love having Marcella on here. She makes it so much more interesting. Plus, she's the only other reason why a lot of people come on here is just because she's pretty, and that's it.
Yeah.
No, she's smart and crazy and stuff like too. They love that too about her. Anyways, join us next week live at noon Eastern Standard Time on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, as we talk to another inspiring author as they tell us about their book and in the inspiring story behind the story. So until next time, folks, remember, keep writing, keep inspiring, and keep sharing as you go beyond the pen.
Go beyond the pen.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.